In the heart of the lush green jungles of Sumatra lived a peaceful herd of elephants. Their leader, a wise old female elephant, had an extraordinary son named Raja. Unlike the other elephants who focused on strength and size, Raja was known for his gentle heart. His large eyes radiated deep curiosity and empathy. He would often observe the world around him with great care, from the lines of ants on the ground to the butterflies dancing in the air. The other elephants admired his kindness, and even the smallest animals were not afraid to approach him. Raja was a gentle soul among mighty creatures. Meanwhile, not far from the herd, lay a small village surrounded by dense trees. In this village lived an 8-year-old boy named Kian. Kian was an orphan who lived with his grandfather, a respected forest guardian. From a young age, Kian had been taught to love and respect nature, and he had a strange, almost telepathic bond with animals. He could spend hours talking to birds or sitting silently by a river, watching the fish. Kian always carried a small pouch of rice or fruit in his pocket, ready to share it with any animal he met. He was known throughout the village as the animal rescuer, and his sincere smile could melt anyone's heart. One afternoon, as the sun began to set, Raja and his herd moved towards the river to drink. Raja's herd was prosperous. They never lacked food or water and lived in harmony. Raja walked beside his mother, learning about water routes and food sources. He felt at peace and safe. However, deep down, Raja felt something different, a faint longing to explore further, to see what lay beyond the boundaries of the forest he knew. At the same time, Kian was helping his grandfather harvest some fruit on the edge of the forest. He heard strange sounds coming from within the woods. Not the usual animal noises, but a hissing sound. He peered into the forest, feeling that something was wrong. His grandfather warned Kian not to get too close, but Kian's curiosity and his instinct to help were too strong to ignore. He felt an unease he couldn't explain, as if something was about to happen that would change everything. Not just for him, but also for the creatures he loved. The unease that Kian felt was not without reason. As he peered deeper into the forest, he saw a thin plume of smoke billowing from behind the trees. It wasn't from a bonfire, but from the remnants of a small forest fire that had occurred a few days earlier. The long dry season had dried up many water sources and made the jungle incredibly vulnerable. Kian knew that the danger didn't just threaten humans, but also the animals that couldn't escape quickly. His grandfather had warned him about these conditions, but Kian never imagined just how serious the impact would be. His heart sank, picturing the animals struggling to find food and water. Meanwhile, deep within the jungle, the drought began to show its teeth. The usual watering hole that Raja and his herd visited had completely dried up. The ground was cracked, and dust flew up with every step they took. Food was also becoming scarce. The other elephants grew restless. The air was filled with their rumbles of confusion and the swishing of their trunks. Raja, who was usually calm, felt the panic of his herd. He saw his mother, the leader, looking worried. They had to find another water source, and that meant they had to travel farther through unfamiliar territory. Back in the village, Kian finally took a leap of faith. He couldn't stand by and do nothing. He filled his pockets with fruit and a few bottles of water, then quietly snuck into the forest. He didn't intend to help all the animals, but at least he could help a few he found along the way. He walked slowly, his ears alert for every sound, his eyes searching for any sign of danger. At the same time, Raja's herd had to split up. His mother decided to divide the herd into 2 groups to search for water in different directions, increasing their chances. Raja, still young, was instructed to follow one of the groups, led by a senior bull elephant. However, in the middle of their journey, the group had to cross a shallow stream. Because of his haste, Raja slipped on a slick rock. As he tried to get up, he heard a rumbling sound and saw a huge shadow falling from the cliff above. A tree, either rotten or a victim of the drought, had toppled and fell directly onto the path he was supposed to take, blocking his way back to the group. Raja was trapped. Alone. He tried to push the massive tree, but he wasn't strong enough. Panic began to consume him. The rumbling sounds of his herd grew fainter. He was alone, thirsty, and terrified. It was then that he heard the sound of small footsteps from behind the bushes. The sound of small footsteps grew closer, making the terrified Raja even more alert. From behind the dry bushes, a small figure emerged. It was Kian, his face filled with worry. Kian saw the huge elephant, Raja, trapped and exhausted. His heart raced. He never expected to find such a big elephant in such a desperate state, separated from his herd and looking so thirsty. Raja's eyes, which usually radiated kindness, were now filled with desperation and fear. Kian wasn't afraid. His instinct told him that the elephant before him was not a threat, but a creature in need of help. Cautiously, he moved closer. Raja let out a low growl, not out of anger but from a place of deep unease. Kian spoke in a soft voice, the way he always did when he calmed other animals. "Hey, don't be scared," Kian whispered. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." Raja froze, staring at the boy. He could feel the warmth and sincerity in Kian's voice. It was like a melody that calmed the storm in his heart. Kian took a bottle of water out of his bag. He placed it on the ground, then slowly pushed it towards Raja with a small stick. Raja looked at the bottle, then at Kian. Doubt still lingered in his eyes, but his thirst was stronger. With his trembling trunk, he took the bottle, sniffed its contents, and then poured the water into his mouth. The water felt like a blessing. After Raja finished drinking, Kian took out the fruits he had brought. He put them on the ground, and once again, Raja took them with his trunk. After a few bites, Raja's energy returned a little, but he was still trapped. Kian tried to push the large tree blocking Raja's path, but the tree was too heavy. A child's strength wouldn't be enough. As Kian was thinking, he heard a low rumble from a distance. It was the sound of Raja's herd calling to one another. Raja heard it too. His large ears moved and his eyes widened with hope. But the sound grew fainter. Raja let out a sad sound like a cry, calling back to his herd who couldn't hear him. Kian saw the deep sadness in the elephant's eyes. He knew Raja had not only lost his way, but also his family. Night began to fall, and the chill of the jungle air became noticeable. Kian couldn't leave Raja alone. He knew Raja wouldn't survive if he was left there by himself. Without a second thought, Kian decided to stay with Raja for the night. He sat beside the giant elephant, leaning his back against the roots of a large tree. He whispered to Raja, "Don't worry. I'll stay with you. We'll find a way out tomorrow." The cold jungle night didn't feel so frightening to Kian because he wasn't alone. He was woken up by a gentle rumbling sound. Raja was sleeping, occasionally letting out soft snores. Morning had arrived, and the sunlight pierced through the gaps in the leaves. Kian observed the large elephant beside him. He could see a small cut on one of Raja's front legs, probably from slipping. Kian's heart filled with empathy. He took his remaining water bottle and gently washed the wound, then covered it with a large leaf he found nearby. Raja just looked at him, as if he understood and was grateful. Suddenly, Raja's ears stood up. He let out a low growl, a warning. Kian tensed up too. He heard footsteps in the distance, but they weren't the sounds of an elephant herd. It was the sound of human footsteps. Kian and Raja exchanged glances. Kian felt scared, but he knew he had to protect Raja. "We have to hide. Don't move." They hid behind the thick bushes. Kian hugged Raja's large leg, trying to calm him. The footsteps grew closer, and they could hear a faint conversation. It was the sound of a few hunters who seemed to be looking for a shortcut. They weren't carrying weapons, just simple tools, but their presence alone was terrifying. One of them commented on the drought, saying it would make it easier to find the tracks of animals gathering at the remaining water sources. Raja, who was very sensitive to smell, suddenly caught a foul odor, the smell of burnt remains and leftover food that the hunters had left behind. Raja let out a low growl, restless. Kian knew Raja couldn't stay hidden forever. The danger didn't just come from humans, but also from the increasingly worsening condition of the forest. After the hunters had passed, Kian and Raja decided to look for a water source. Kian took on the role of the guide, using his knowledge of the jungle to find the safest path. Raja, though bigger and stronger, followed Kian's every step. It was as if he had completely put his trust in the small boy. They found a small spring that was almost dry. Though it wasn't much, the water was enough to quench their thirst. They rested for a moment, looking at each other, building a deeper bond. Kian leaned his head against Raja's leg, feeling the warmth and gentleness of his thick skin. But the peace didn't last long. From a distance, they heard the loud wail of a siren. It was a rescue team, looking for people or animals lost due to the drought. The sound, which should have been a sign of hope, only made Raja panic. He had a natural instinct to stay away from loud noises and too many humans. Raja grumbled, his eyes showing fear. He gently nudged Kian with his trunk, as if telling Kian to leave this dangerous place. Kian knew they had to move quickly, or they would be found and possibly separated forever. In a panic, Raja waved his trunk, signaling to Kian that they had to leave immediately. The siren's wail was getting closer, and Raja's fear was contagious. They both ran, escaping the deafening noise. Raja ran fast, but steadily, as if he knew exactly where Kian was. Kian had to run as hard as he could to keep up with Raja's large footsteps. They didn't know where they were going. All that mattered was getting away from the danger. As they ran, the weather suddenly changed. The sky, which had been clear, was now covered with dark clouds. A strong wind blew, scattering dry leaves, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. All at once, it started to pour. This was a gift they had long awaited. The rain soaked Raja's dry skin and Kian's face. They stopped for a moment, letting themselves get drenched. This rain was a savior. It could replenish the dry water sources, clear the dust, and put out any remaining fires. But their hope was short-lived. The rain was not normal. It was so heavy that it flooded the small rivers and turned the dry ground into sticky mud. Instead of helping, this rain created a new problem. A small river they were crossing suddenly overflowed, its current becoming dangerously strong. Kian slipped and was swept away by the current. He screams, his voice filled with panic. Raja, seeing his small friend in danger, didn't hesitate. Quickly, he extended his trunk towards Kian. Raja struggled against the powerful current. His massive body became a foothold, while his trunk searched for Kian. Kian grabbed Raja's trunk, and with all his might, Raja pulled him back to the bank. Kian was drenched, shivering from the cold, but he was safe. He looked up at Raja, his eyes filled with gratitude. Raja looked back at him, as if to say, "I won't let you go." But in the midst of it all, Kian realized something. The overflowing river had now separated them from their intended path. They were isolated. The jungle had become a deceiving labyrinth, and they were now trapped in a place Kian didn't know at all. They were both cold, exhausted, and caught by nature itself. They were trapped. The overflowing river was now a huge barrier, separating Kian and Raja from familiar ground. Raja grumbled in frustration, pointing his trunk at the raging, fast-flowing water. Kian, cold and exhausted, realized how desperate their situation was. They couldn't cross the strong current, and there seemed to be no other way to get back. As night fell, the rain subsided, but a thick fog began to blanket the forest. The fog wasn't normal. Kian noticed a strange smell, a familiar smell. It was smoke. It turned out the small fire they saw a few days ago hadn't completely gone out, and the heavy rain had pushed the smoke towards them. They were not only trapped by the water, but also by the suffocating smoke. Raja, who was very sensitive to smell, started to cough and feel uncomfortable. Kian immediately led him to a slightly higher area, away from the smoke. Kian used his knowledge of the forest. He climbed a small tree to get a better look around. From above, he saw a small cave in the cliff across the river. The cave looked dry and protected from the smoke. It was their only hope for surviving the night. But how could they cross? The river's current was still too strong. Kian thought hard, and his eyes fell on a large, fallen tree stretching across the river. The tree was a dangerous natural bridge, but it was their only way. Kian knew it was too risky, especially for the massive Raja, but they had no other choice. Raja looked at the tree with doubt. Kian stroked Raja's trunk, trying to reassure him. "I know this is scary, Raja, but it's the only way. I'll go first. We can get through this together." Carefully, Kian began to step onto the slick log. He walked slowly, one step at a time. Raja followed behind him, each of his steps causing the log to creak. Suddenly, the creaking turned into a crack. The tree couldn't hold Raja's weight. Kian screamed, watching his friend fall into the roaring, fast-flowing water. Kian screamed, his voice swallowed by the roar of the rushing water. He watched as Raja struggled, his massive body being carried away by the current. Raja momentarily turned to look at Kian, his eyes showing both panic and resignation. Kian didn't think twice. Without hesitation, he jumped into the water, swimming with all his might towards Raja. He wasn't going to leave his friend. The cold, powerful current slammed into Kian. He had to fight hard just to stay afloat. Raja saw Kian's desperate act. With what little energy he had left, he used his trunk to grab Kian and pull him onto his back. Kian clung to Raja's neck tightly. With Kian on his back, Raja managed to get his feet on the riverbed. Although the current was still strong, his steady legs were able to hold them against it. With great difficulty, Raja walked against the current, while Kian occasionally pointed towards the cliff where they had seen the cave. Slowly but surely, they managed to cross the river. They were both out of breath, cold, and exhausted, but they were safe. They reached the cave Kian had seen from the tree. It was small, but it was big enough to shelter them from the cold night and the thick smoke. Inside the cave, Kian started a small fire using dry wood he found. The firelight illuminated their weary faces. Kian leaned against Raja's large body, and the warmth from the elephant gave him comfort. Kian realized that they now shared an incredible bond. It wasn't just because Raja had saved him, but because they had come to rely on each other in the face of constant danger. Kian gently stroked Raja's wet trunk. "We're safe, Raja. We made it," he whispered. Raja responded with a soft rumble, a gesture Kian understood as a sign of gratitude. That night, they not only found shelter, but also a new understanding of what true friendship meant. However, outside the cave, the smoke haze grew thicker, obscuring the sky and the stars. They didn't know how widespread the danger was, or if anyone would ever find them. Kian knew they could only hold out for so long. The jungle, which had once felt like home, now felt like a prison. The night in the cave felt long and unnerving. The smoky haze outside grew even thicker, making the air inside the cave feel heavy. Kian woke up in the middle of the night, coughing. He saw Raja was restless too, his massive body breathing heavily. Kian knew they couldn't stay here for too long. Their condition was getting worse. With what little energy he had, Kian went outside the cave to look for a way out. He followed the cliffside along the river, hoping to find another path. His sharp eyes cut through the fog, searching for a clue. He found some footprints in the mud that had already started to dry. They weren't human or elephant footprints, but a monkey's. Kian knew monkeys wouldn't stay in a dangerous place. He felt that the tracks were a sign. He went back to the cave and woke up Raja. "Raja, look at this," he whispered, showing him the footprints. "These are monkey tracks. Monkeys usually know how to get out of danger. Maybe we can follow them." Raja, who was very tired, looked at the tracks with skepticism, but seeing the determination in Kian's eyes, he finally agreed. They left the cave, walking slowly, following the trail. They walked through bushes, crossed slippery rocks, and climbed small hills. The tracks led them deeper into the forest, away from the river and the threatening smoke. As they kept walking, Kian saw a large fallen tree. It was a very old banyan tree with roots hanging down. Kian remembered his grandfather telling him about this tree. The tree was a symbol of the past, and a hidden water source was often found around it. But as they got closer to the tree, they heard a sound from a distance. It was the sound of an elephant herd calling. Raja's heart raced. It was his herd's call, and it sounded very close. Raja trumpeted back, a sound filled with hope and longing. Kian looked into Raja's shining eyes, and he felt a deep happiness. They were no longer alone. But the sound suddenly stopped. The thick, smoky haze swallowed the sound, and they were isolated again. Raja lowered his head sadly. He had almost touched hope, but it was suddenly snatched away. Kian understood. He couldn't just rely on luck. They had to find a way to get through the smoke haze that was separating them from the herd. Despair began to consume both Raja and Kian. The thick, smoky haze was like an invisible wall separating them from everything. Raja, with tears in his eyes, lowered his head, as if resigned to his fate. Kian saw the deep sadness in the elephant's eyes, and his heart ached. He knew he had to do something. Kian sat down next to Raja. He held Raja's trunk, feeling its rough texture. "We'll find them, Raja. We're not giving up," he whispered, his voice trembling. Kian tried to remember everything his grandfather had taught him about the forest, about how nature could provide clues. His grandfather always said, "When all paths are closed, lift your head. The stars will always show the way." That night, Kian and Raja were in a small clearing. The smoky haze began to thin out in the higher areas, and Kian saw something magical. The stars started to appear. Kian smiled. He pointed to the sky, looking for a cluster of stars he knew. The Big Dipper, or, in his local language, the guiding star. That cluster of stars always pointed north, the opposite direction of Kian's village. But it might be the right direction to find the elephant herd. "Look, Raja," Kian said, pointing to the sky. "It's the guiding star. It will show us the way." Raja lifted his head, his large eyes staring at the sky. He seemed to understand what Kian was saying. He waved his trunk, as if signaling that he was ready to continue the journey. They walked in the silence of the night. Kian in front, Raja following behind, using the stars as their only compass. The journey was difficult. The ascending terrain made them struggle. Kian often had to stop to rest, and Raja patiently waited for him. During one of their breaks, Kian climbed onto Raja's large back, and Raja carried him across small streams and other obstacles. They became a team, complementing each other. But in the middle of their journey, Kian saw a faint light in the distance. It wasn't natural light. It was a flashlight beam. Kian's heart pounded. He knew this could be help, but it could also be a danger. They had to make a difficult decision. Should they approach the light or stay hidden? Kian looked at Raja. The elephant's eyes were filled with doubt. He didn't know if he should trust humans. The dilemma was heavy. Kian looked at the flashlight beam, then turned to Raja. He saw the fear in the elephant's eyes, and he knew Raja would never willingly approach that light. After everything they had been through, Kian couldn't force Raja to do something that went against his instincts. He made an incredibly difficult decision. "You have to go, Raja," Kian whispered. "I'll find out who they are. If they are good people, I'll come back for you." Raja, as if in disagreement, he waved his trunk, refusing to leave Kian. Kian hugged the elephant's trunk, his eyes welling up with tears. "I have to, Raja. If we are both seen, they might separate us. Let me take this risk." With a heavy heart, Kian left Raja. He walked slowly, heading towards the flashlight beam. Raja watched Kian go, his heart feeling empty. He wanted to stop Kian, but he knew Kian was right. Kian had to take this risk. Raja hid behind the bushes, watching Kian walk away. Kian walked cautiously. He followed the source of the light. And finally, he saw a middle-aged man wearing a forest ranger's uniform. It was Kian's grandfather. He was with his team, and they were looking for Kian. Kian felt relieved, but he also felt sad. He couldn't just let Raja go. As Kian was about to call out to his grandfather, he saw the rescue team carrying a net. The net wasn't for small animals, but for an elephant. Kian's grandfather looked worried. He explained to his team that they had to capture the lost elephant to ensure its safety, because the forest had become too dangerous. His grandfather didn't know that the elephant they were looking for was Raja, the elephant who had now become Kian's friend. Kian realized he couldn't let Raja be found. He knew what would happen if they captured Raja. He would be separated from his herd and possibly taken to a sanctuary to live in loneliness. Kian knew he had to protect Raja, even if it meant sacrificing himself. As the rescue team began to move, Kian, "Grandpa, I'm here!" Kian's yell caught the attention of the rescue team. They immediately ran towards Kian. "Kian, I'm safe! I'm safe! There's an elephant over there! I'm scared!" Kian knew this was the only way. By sacrificing his reunion with his grandfather, he could give Raja time to escape. The rescue team approached Kian, and Kian quickly hugged his grandfather, pretending to be relieved. He glanced in the direction where Raja was hiding. Raja saw everything. He saw Kian smiling, but his eyes were filled with sadness. Raja understood. Kian had sacrificed everything for him. Raja watched Kian leave with the rescue team. His heart ached. He knew that Kian's sacrifice was not just for him, but for his freedom. With a heavy heart, Raja turned away. He had to go. He had to follow the faint scent of his herd, which now felt even more distant. Raja walked slowly, occasionally looking back, hoping to see Kian again. But all he saw was the darkness of the forest, swallowing his friend's small figure. Meanwhile, Kian walked with his grandfather, his hand held tightly. His grandfather asked what had happened. Kian told him, with tears streaming down his face, about a lost elephant and how they had helped each other to survive. Kian didn't mention his sacrifice. He simply said that he found the elephant and helped it, and then the elephant left when the rescue team arrived. "You are an amazing boy, Kian," his grandfather said, hugging him tightly. "You were so brave. But my boy, elephants can't live with humans. They have to return to their herd." Kian nodded, but his heart felt empty. He knew his grandfather was right, but he couldn't forget the friendship they had built. He looked back at the dark forest. He hoped Raja was okay, that he had managed to find his herd. Raja, now walking alone, felt a deep loneliness. He walked slowly, trying to follow the scent and the tracks he remembered. The night felt cold and silent. He missed the warmth of the small fire Kian had made, his soft voice, and his unwavering courage. He felt like a part of him was missing. As the moon shone brightly over the treetops, Raja arrived at a clearing. From a distance, he saw his herd, gathered at a new water source. They were all safe and sound, but Raja didn't join them immediately. He stood on the edge, watching them from a distance. He felt a sense of relief, but he also felt sad. He had finally made it back, but the price was so high. He had to lose the only friend he had during his most difficult moments. Raja looked back towards Kian's village, towards the twinkling lights in the distance. He knew he could never go back there, but he also knew that he would never forget Kian. As Raja watched his herd from a distance, he felt two conflicting emotions: relief that they were all safe, and a deep sadness from having to be separated from Kian. He finally joined his group, greeted with welcoming trumpets and rumbles of joy. His mother approached him, sniffing his body, as if to make sure her son was okay. Raja felt the warmth of his herd, but his heart felt empty. He couldn't forget Kian. Raja became more withdrawn. He was no longer as active as before. He would often isolate himself, sitting under a tree, watching the night sky, and thinking about Kian. The other elephants noticed the change, but they didn't know the reason. Raja kept the secret of his friendship with Kian to himself. He knew no other elephant would understand why he missed a human so much. Meanwhile, in the village, Kian felt the same way. He returned to his normal life, but he never truly felt complete. He often went to the edge of the forest, hoping to see Raja. He would bring fruit, placing it in the spot where they first met. A small hope, but was never fulfilled. Every night, he sat on his porch, staring into the forest, imagining Raja walking under the same stars. Kian's grandfather noticed his grandson's sadness. One day, he asked, "Why are you so sad, my boy? Aren't you safe now?" Kian looked at his grandfather, tears starting to flow down his face. "I lost my friend, Grandpa. That elephant, he was more than just an animal. He saved me, and I left him." His grandfather understood. He hugged Kian. "My boy, true friendship knows no boundaries, even if it's between a human and an elephant. The memory will always be in your heart. That's what's most important." His grandfather's words comforted Kian a little, but the pain of separation still felt real. Both Raja and Kian lived in two different worlds, separated by a vast jungle, but bound by an unforgettable memory. They knew there was a lesson to be learned from this separation, a lesson about the meaning of sacrifice and true love. Both Kian and Raja carried an unseen wound. Their hearts, once filled with the joy of friendship, now ached. Kian tried to go back to his routine. He went to school, helped his grandfather, and played with his friends. But his smile was no longer as warm as it used to be. His friends noticed the change. They saw Kian often daydreaming, staring into the forest with a vacant look in his eyes. One day, one of Kian's friends asked, "Kian, why are you always so sad? What happened?" Kian just smiled sadly and answered, "I miss someone." He couldn't explain that someone was an elephant, because he knew no one would understand. He felt lonely, isolated by his secret and his memories. He often spent time at the place where they first met, stroking the grass and leaves, as if touching the memory of Raja that was still there. In the forest, Raja also felt the same loneliness. Even though he was surrounded by his herd, he felt alone. He often strayed from the herd's route, looking for a quiet place to sit under a tree and remember the days he spent with Kian. He remembered how Kian had helped him, how Kian had saved him, and how Kian had sacrificed himself. Raja waved his trunk, as if searching for Kian's scent, which was no longer there. One night, Raja's herd was walking near the forest's border. Suddenly, Raja caught a familiar scent, a scent he knew from Kian's body, the smell of sweet, fresh soap. Raja's heart pounded. He waved his trunk, trying to catch the source of the scent. He saw a scarf caught on a tree branch. The scarf didn't belong to Kian, but its color was the same as the one Kian's grandfather wore that day. Raja immediately recognized the scarf. This was a clue, a message from the outside world. Raja felt a glimmer of hope. He knew he couldn't let Kian be as lonely as he was. He had to do something. Without hesitation, he separated from his herd, walking in the opposite direction. His mother saw him and rumbled, trying to call Raja back, but Raja didn't listen. He had to find Kian. He had to make sure Kian was okay. Raja didn't listen to his mother's call. He knew his herd was his family, but there was an unspoken promise he had to fulfill. He had to make sure Kian was okay. Raja walked towards the village, his steps filled with determination. He walked through bushes, crossed small rivers, and pushed through the fog that had started to return. Nothing could stop him. Meanwhile, Kian was sitting on his porch. He looked at the stars in the sky and remembered the nights he spent with Raja. He missed the warmth of Raja's trunk and the sense of safety he felt when he was beside him. Kian took a piece of paper and a pencil. He started to draw, carefully sketching Raja's face, his large and gentle eyes and his strong trunk. He drew himself smiling, sitting on Raja's back, and the two of them walking under the stars. Kian's grandfather saw him. He smiled and said, "You truly love him, my boy. Your friendship will become a timeless story." As Kian finished his drawing, he heard a familiar rumbling sound from a distance. It was not a normal rumble, but one he knew. Kian's heart pounded. He immediately ran to the edge of the forest, hoping what he heard was real. He saw from a distance a large elephant standing under a tree. It was Raja. Kian couldn't hold back his tears. Raja had come back. Kian ran towards Raja. Raja was waiting for him. They didn't care about the risk or the danger. All they cared about was each other. Kian hugged Raja's leg, and Raja responded by gently stroking his trunk on Kian's hair. It was a moment filled with emotion, a heartwarming reunion. But in the middle of their happiness, Kian noticed something. Raja was limping. He saw a new wound on Raja's leg, a wound he seemed to have gotten during his journey. Kian gently stroked the wound. "Why did you come back, Raja?" he whispered. "Why did you take this risk?" Raja looked into Kian's eyes, and Kian understood. Raja hadn't come back because he was lost. He had come back because he was looking for him. He had sacrificed everything for Kian. Raja had proven that an elephant never forgets a friend. With tears flowing, Kian hugged Raja's wounded leg. Raja, despite his pain, lowered his head, gently stroking Kian's hair with his trunk. That moment was the culmination of everything they had been through. Sacrifice, loneliness, and uncertainty. They had found each other again, but at a great cost. Kian knew he couldn't leave Raja alone with his wound. He immediately ran home to get his grandfather's first aid kit. Kian's grandfather, seeing Kian out of breath and covered in mud, asked, "What's wrong, my boy? Are you all right?" Kian didn't answer. He just grabbed the first aid kit and ran back to the forest as fast as he could. His grandfather, who knew Kian wouldn't lie, sensed that something was wrong and followed him from a distance. When Kian's grandfather saw his grandson cleaning the wound on a large elephant's leg, he was shocked. But he didn't panic. He saw how Kian interacted with the elephant, with deep love and gentleness. He saw the elephant's eyes, which radiated gratitude. Kian's grandfather finally understood. The elephant Kian had talked about, the one he called his friend, was not just his imagination. Kian's grandfather approached slowly. Raja, who was sensitive to the presence of humans, tensed up. But Kian's grandfather showed no fear. He saw how Raja had cared for Kian. He saw the affection between the two of them. Kian's grandfather came closer, and Kian introduced his grandfather to Raja. "Raja, this is my grandpa," Kian whispered. "He's a good person." Kian's grandfather took some fruit from his bag and gave it to Raja. Raja hesitated, but he finally accepted the fruit. Kian's grandfather then helped Kian clean and treat Raja's wound. It was a rare sight, 2 generations of humans and an elephant working together in the silence of the forest. Kian's grandfather looked at his grandson with pride. He finally realized that Kian's connection to nature was far deeper than he had ever imagined. Kian had taught him that true friendship knows no physical or species boundaries. However, he knew Raja couldn't stay. He had to return to his herd. The forest was too dangerous for a solitary elephant. After Raja's wound was treated, Kian's grandfather sat down next to Kian. He looked at Raja, then turned to his grandson. "My boy, this elephant can't stay here," he said in a soft voice. "He must return to his herd. The forest is too dangerous for him alone." Kian nodded, tears streaming down his face. He knew his grandfather was right, but he didn't want to be separated from Raja again. He hugged Raja's leg, trying to hold back his tears. Raja touched Kian with his trunk, as if to comfort him. Kian's grandfather saw the bond between them, and he knew this separation had to be handled correctly. "Kian, you have to help him. You have to show him the way home," Kian's grandfather said. "This is your last duty as his friend. Your job is to make sure he returns to where he belongs." Kian nodded again, his eyes filled with determination. He knew this was the only way to prove his love for Raja. With his grandfather's guidance, Kian and Raja began to walk in the right direction, towards the place where Raja's herd was last seen. Kian's grandfather followed them from a distance, giving Kian and Raja space to have their final moments together. They walked all night, Kian pointing to the stars and Raja following his every step. They didn't speak, but there was a deep understanding between them. Raja knew this was the end of their journey. As dawn broke, they arrived at a valley. From a distance, they saw Raja's herd, drinking from a water source. Kian looked at Raja, and Raja looked back at him. There was an unspoken signal. Kian knew Raja had to go. "You have to go, Raja," Kian whispered. "Go back to your family. They are waiting for you." Raja didn't move immediately. He extended his trunk, touching Kian's hand. Kian hugged his trunk, letting his tears flow. This was an inevitable separation, but they both knew their friendship would last forever. Raja gently stroked Kian's hand with his trunk, a profound gesture of farewell. Kian hugged Raja's trunk one last time, letting his tears flow freely. "Goodbye, Raja," he whispered, his voice choked. "I will never forget you." Raja looked at Kian, his large eyes radiating the same sadness, a promise that he too would never forget the boy who had become his friend. With a heavy heart, Raja turned away. He walked slowly towards his herd, while Kian stood still, watching Raja disappear. Kian watched as Raja joined his herd, greeted with trumpets of welcome and pure joy. Raja turned back once more towards Kian, as if to say one final goodbye. Then he disappeared among the trees, returning to the world where he belonged. Kian stood there for a long time. His heart ached, but he also felt a sense of peace. He knew he had done the right thing. He didn't hold Raja back. Instead, he let him return to where he was meant to be. His grandfather came and hugged him. "You did the right thing, my boy," he whispered. "True friendship is about giving, not possessing." Kian and his grandfather returned to the village. Kian's life went back to normal, but something about him was different. He no longer felt lonely because he carried the memory of Raja in his heart. He knew that even though they were separated, their bond would never break. A few days later, as Kian was drawing on his porch, he saw a footprint in the mud. It wasn't a human footprint, but an elephant's. The footprint didn't lead into the forest, but to a small spring near the village, which was now full of water. Kian smiled. He knew who had done it. Raja, although he had returned to his herd, had not forgotten Kian's village. He had come back to make sure Kian and his village would not lack water. It was Raja's way of saying, "I'm here. I never left." That footprint in the mud became a small secret known only to Kian and his grandfather. Every few months, Kian would see the same track, always leading to the spring. It was a silent message, a reminder that Raja never forgot their promise. Kian would smile every time he saw it, his heart filled with a sense of peace. He knew that even though they were separated, they were still connected. Time passed. Kian grew into a young man. He pursued his studies and became a conservationist, dedicated to protecting the forest and the animals within it. He often told his colleagues the story of his friendship with an elephant, even though they often treated it as a fictional tale. Kian didn't care. He knew the truth behind it. Meanwhile, Raja grew into a strong and wise elephant. He became the new leader of his herd, replacing his aging mother. He led his herd to safer places, to water sources that didn't dry up, and away from danger. Raja always guided his herd away from the dangerous areas inhabited by humans, but he always led them past the border of Kian's village, as if to say, "Hello." One day, Kian heard bad news. A very large and powerful bull elephant had separated from its herd and was blocking the main road to the village. Everyone was in a panic. Kian, without hesitation, immediately went to the location. He knew no other elephant would dare to come so close to human settlements. Except Raja. Kian arrived there. He saw Raja standing in the middle of the road, rumbling and waving his trunk. The villagers were terrified. Kian realized Raja wasn't angry. He was trying to warn them. Kian approached him slowly. "Raja," he whispered. "Why are you here? What's wrong?" Raja turned, his large eyes staring at Kian. Raja didn't rumble, but he gently touched Kian's leg. Kian understood. He saw Raja's eyes filled with anxiety. Raja would never harm a human, but he had come to warn them. Kian gently touched Raja's trunk, trying to calm him. Raja didn't move, but he kept rumbling softly, his eyes looking towards the forest behind him. Kian understood. Raja hadn't come to hurt anyone. He had come to give a warning. Kian turned to the villagers. "He's not angry," Kian said. "He's trying to tell us something. He wants us to leave this place." The villagers didn't believe him. They were still in a panic. Kian's grandfather, who saw Kian interacting with Raja, came closer. "Kian is right," he said. "An elephant wouldn't come this close without a reason. There's danger ahead." Kian turned back to Raja. "What's the danger, Raja?" he whispered. Raja lifted his trunk, pointing towards the forest. Suddenly, Kian caught a faint scent. The smell was familiar, but he couldn't place it. He approached the trees on the side of the road and saw strange marks. The marks weren't footprints. They were tire tracks. Kian realized what was happening. He turned back to Raja. "They're coming," he whispered. "They're coming this way." Raja nodded, his eyes filled with sadness. Kian knew Raja had seen something bad in the forest. Maybe illegal hunters or a group of loggers that would destroy their habitat. Raja had come here, putting himself in danger, just to protect the human who had once been his friend. Kian turned back to the villagers. "We have to leave immediately," he yelled. "There is danger ahead. This elephant came here to warn us." Some of the villagers began to believe him. They saw the sincerity in Kian's eyes and the elephant's. They began to turn back, running towards the village. Kian hugged Raja's neck, thanking him. Raja responded with his trunk, as if to say, "Be careful, my friend." Raja returned to the forest. He had done his duty. He had warned Kian and his village, proving once again that their friendship was timeless. Kian watched Raja disappear, his heart filled with pride. Raja had become an incredible elephant, an unsung hero. Kian stared into the forest, watching Raja disappear. He knew they wouldn't meet again anytime soon. This time, the separation didn't feel painful, but rather was filled with gratitude and understanding. Kian returned to the village, telling the villagers what had happened. The villagers, who had not believed him before, were now filled with shame and awe. They had witnessed firsthand how an elephant had sacrificed himself to protect them. From that day on, Kian became a hero in the eyes of the villagers. The story of the extraordinary friendship between Kian and Raja became a legend passed down from generation to generation. Kian continued his work as a conservationist, but with a new mission: to build a bridge between humans and nature. He taught the villagers to respect the forest and the animals within it, not just as a resource, but also as part of their community. Many years later, Kian brought his son to the edge of the forest. He pointed towards the jungle, telling the story of a boy and an elephant. His son listened with shining eyes. As they walked, they found an elephant footprint in the mud. His son, curious, asked, "Dad, is that Raja's footprint?" Kian smiled. He didn't answer, but he knew that the footprint was a sign, a reminder that an elephant never forgets a friend. Their friendship, which began in conflict and grew through adversity, had now become a legacy that would never be lost. Raja had become the unseen guardian of the forest, and Kian had become the guardian of the memory of eternal love and loyalty. Their story was a lesson about unconditional love, selfless sacrifice, and the power of a bond that transcends all differences.